Yes, good evening, everyone. Tonight's our final collaborate, so well done, everyone, on making it this far and leaping over all the obstacles you have to jump over. And the plan is that our Swinburne academic, who's just joining us now, is going to take some questions. We have a few pre-prepared questions for him, but if you would like to grab the mic and ask him a question, or if you would like to type in the chat box and ask him a question, Kristen and I can relay them. And he's our academic in charge of the whole course, and he also is in charge of the postgraduate unit, which is similar but faster and a bit more advanced, and also the author of the book. So I think he's trying to join us now, but maybe having a few tech issues. We'll just perhaps yeah, he's trying to join us, and so is Rachel. If Alex gets in successfully, just looking, he's coming in and out. All right, well, what we might do is continue with the pre-planned session, because what was going to happen was Alex was going to take the questions and then, being very busy, go away and do what he has to do. And then Kristen and I were going to carry on with the thing. So why don't we flip it and carry on while we're waiting to see. And I may have to duck out to give him a hand, in which case I'm sure Kristen can take over. Okay, well, that's the plan. I'll introduce him when he comes in. Just a quick word on feedback on assignment 1B. So yeah, remember that be positive about it. Most of what we're trying to give you on the 1B is tips for the exam in a sort of diplomatic way. So if you follow what Kristen has said and what I've said, you should do very well in the exam. Exams, by the way, as you know now, by being seasoned second years, if not longer, you don't get feedback. An exam is called a summative assessment, which means the unit's over, you can't really improve or do better in it later, so you get a mark. Whereas during the TP, we have, in the jargon of the profession, formative assessments, which means we give you feedback because it can always help you do better in the next one during that TP. Yeah, most of you did ILAC very well. There's one or two stubborn resistors who don't apparently like to use ILAC, sorry. But I was very impressed. Great work, in general, to everybody, and some really outstanding stuff too. So just wonderful to see. I don't know how Kristen went. Any comments, Kristen, on the ones you saw of 1B?
No, I would say very similar, and probably overall in terms of ILAC, I think the bit that was probably, I wouldn't say a struggle, but where people maybe felt a little bit more so was just the application. Like, I think people identified a lot of cases and what was important from those cases, but then just was perhaps really brief in actually applying that, which I think is such an important part. But that's all.
Alrighty, so well done, everyone, on that one. I know that you're probably tired of hearing about this. This is mainly not for the superstars who've come along tonight, but for those listening to the recording, some who may have just decided to listen to one, and the one or two who haven't quite got this. Reasons why you want to use the ILAC method is it's widespread in the legal profession. So judges tend to use it in giving their judgment. So if you read some of the newer judgments, you'll find they're pretty much laid out in this way, and the judgment at the end where the conclusion is. Secondly, because it's so widespread in the legal profession and legal studies, if you're going to go on and do further studies, it'll be really handy and a leg up to know about ILAC. Sometimes called IRAC. I think in Western Australia, it's IRAC issue rule, the rule of law, but law seems sensible to me. And that's basically how you do it. Yeah, the one I find that people have most trouble with is the law section, if they have any trouble at all. But a lot of you are doing really super law sections too. All you need is the case and the principle. You don't have to summarize the case and say who said what and what their names were, just the case and the principle. And I will give an example of that for those who are still unsure later on. I think Alex is trying to join us now. Yeah, I thought we'd just do a quick run through. I don't want to drag it out, but some common mistakes that we've seen as we go through them. One of them is, and you certainly in an assignment, it's if you want to do that and use up your word count rewriting things. And I believe we have Alex with us. And I will just come to moderator if we can. Alex, good evening. Can you hear me? Dr. Wan, I should say, your full title. I'm not sure if Dr. Wan can hear me, but perhaps type in the chat box if you have sound trouble. Just checking. I'm not sure if you can hear me, Dr. Wan. Okay, I'll just carry on for the moment. If you can hear me, Dr. Wan, just let me know. Either grab the mic or type in the chat box, and I will pass it over to you for the Q&A. In the meantime, we'll just push on while perhaps we're getting the technology sorted out. Yeah, so I guess what I was saying was don't rewrite the question. In an assignment, fine if you want to have a cover sheet. I mean, I've sometimes have done that. But when it comes to the exam, the assessor knows the question. They don't need to know it. And they'll have a marking guide. And I promise you, nowhere on the marking guide does it say, 5 marks for repeating the question. There's none. So essentially, if you rewrite the question, and some people tend to put it as facts, they put a heading facts, and then they write out basically the question again. There's no marks in it. You're just kind of losing time. So remember, coming up for the exam, straight into the issue, straight into your ILAC, and that's really your best option. Just going to check chat again for Dr. Wan, see if he can communicate. Stephen, thanks, Stephen. That's great. I'm not sure if he can hear me, but perhaps he can see me on the chat or see your question. Yeah, so just jump straight into the issue. Is the defendant's conduct tantamount to negligence, or is there a contract? Was there a valid offer? Straight in, no need to go over the question again. Okay, so law things, again, some people are writing it in a narrative form, which is nice if you've got the time for that. In the exam, I doubt you will have. But all you really need is a list of the cases and the statute sections. So when it comes to statutes, you'll put, ACL section 18, misleading and deceptive conduct, and maybe what it means in a sentence, and next and next and next. That's all you need. It's basically a list. Oh, Alex is typing. This is exciting, people. I think Dr. Wan's going to be with us shortly. We'll just see. So remember, there's going to be 2 kinds of citations. One kind is what you're very much used to after the first half, which is cases, X and Y, and the principle. And then the second kind is going to be a statute. Now, I'll risk my neck and say Australian Consumer Law, Section 18, for example, and mention the section. Okay, Alex, I'm not sure if you can all read that. Dr. Wan says, hello, everyone. I'm having some difficulties with the sound. I'll see what I can do. No problems. We've got some other material, Dr. Wan, so if you can sort it out, I'm not sure if you can. I think under the cog on the bottom right of your screen, you can run tests on your sound and video and such. That might be worth doing, but you probably know that already. But maybe give that a shot. And while Dr. Wan's just getting that sorted, we'll continue. Thank you for joining us, by the way, Dr. Wan. I know how busy you are. Now, there what you see is an example. Still can't hear me. Can everyone else hear me, by the way? Am I? Better check that. Oh, okay, great. Thank heavens. Well, obviously, Dr. Wan can see the chat box, so we just need to get that sound issue sorted. There's a typical simple law section. Notice no narration. All you need is your case name. Now, by the way, in the exam, you don't need the long form. You don't have to put all this year and which volume and which set to answer Natasha's question, which just popped up. All you need is the two names and what the principle is. So the principle of pharmaceutical study of Great Britain and Boots is a display of goods for sale at a marked price is not an offer and should be regarded as an invitation to treat. That's it. Next. And one thing to remember is, yeah, thanks, Kristen. If you could help Dr. Wan, that would be great. What was I going to say? One thing to remember is what I've forgotten, whatever that may have been. A display of goods for sale at a marked price. Yes. Yes, I recall. Every one you list, if you list 50 cases here, you're clearly not going to have time to apply them in your application, because the kind of rule is if you mention it here, that same name, pharmaceutical study program, should appear in your application. And here you don't need to mention anything to do with the case. You don't need to mention Bob or Freddie or whoever we're going to talk about. This is purely law. And then when you get to your application, you apply this to Bob's particular situation. So all the ones you list here should be mentioned in your application at some stage. And this is the detailed section. This is where you get a lot of marks. Stephen's asked whether they need to be alphabetical. Not at all, Stephen. Just as you think those will apply, you think, well, that's a relevant case. That one, just write them down with the principle. And if everyone's done their case tables, that's going to be a doddle, because all you have to do, you'll recognize and go, oh, okay, this is Australian consumer law. Here's my page on the different sections and what the principle of those sections are. And you pick out the ones you think will apply to this case. So you'll basically already have written this kind of thing. That's why that case table is pure gold. But no, any order is fine, as long as you get the most important relevant cases. And that's what we're looking for. It's, you know, we're not expecting you to have that much in-depth knowledge. Just wondering if someone could type a note to Dr. Wan, ask how he's going. I think he's still in. I'll check that he's still in. Yep, still with us on the list anyway. You have a look at what it says about him. We've got as a make presenter, make caption. Oops, made him a presenter, moderator. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Okay, well, I'll carry on while somebody else can maybe chat to Dr. Wan. Thanks, Kristen. Right, so this is where a lot of the marks are. The cases you mentioned in law are now applied to the actual facts, and this is where you're establishing, if it was, say, contract law, whether there's an offer or acceptance, or you're establishing whether Joe has any recourse under the Australian consumer law and on what basis. And the other big thing there that we noticed is mention the sections. We're all used to mentioning cases, but there's almost a kind of shyness about sections. Everybody knows section 18. So we'll always see section 18, but there's lots of other sections, you know, section 4 predictions about the future, section 29 remedies, say around section 246 and what they are. So instead of just saying under the Australian consumer law, Fred can obtain remedies, you put, you know, section 246, section this, section that. As soon as you put a section in, you're probably scoring a point. Okay, going on about application. Yeah, those are the main things, I think. And yeah, remember, just as a thought occurs to me, it's about showing off. You're showing off your legal knowledge. So there might be a case where you, rather than say, this is not a counteroffer, you might say, if the court sees this as a counteroffer, then such and so in a case or a section. But if the court sees it as an invitation to treat, then so and so. So it's not really your job to judge what the situation is. And a lot of people I know are going to make fantastic judges because it's straight away, right, Bob's wrong, he's this, and so's right. That's not what we do. What we do is look at both sides. So if the court says this, then so and so. If they say the opposite, then so and so. And that's, of course, the lawyer hat, not the judge hat. Missing info, great. We saw a lot of missing info. No problem in putting a subheading, or you might put it in your conclusion, or your conclusion with a subheading. Just the second part is that not everyone's getting is make sure you mention why that missing info is important and what the impact might be. You won't get such a question, but if it was a negligence question, it might be missing info. We do not know whether Fred had been consuming alcohol, because if he had, then it might support a defense of contributory negligence. So you're saying why that missing info is important rather than just a straight list. So these are all tips we're picking up for you. Yeah, obviously base your conclusion on your arguments. Don't argue one thing and then suddenly reverse yourself in the conclusion. And this is where you put remedies, including Australian consumer law sections. Now, I know we're doing contracts and you'll all be steeped in contracts, and corporations law, nearly everyone was really busy with assignments and stuff. But the Australian consumer law is a feature, and you'll find a section on the textbook in it, and you'll find learning materials on it, week 3, I think, if I recall correctly. Make sure you know that your Australian consumer law and the relevant sections, and ideally have at least a page of that in your case table, because it may come in handy. Yeah, most marks law and application. The good old ILAC, there it is. If you printed this out, and you can always enlarge it using your magnifier in the PDF we put up, but that guides you through the whole process, really. And I wouldn't even stress about the introduction. I'd just go issue, law, application, conclusion, and it tells you step by step, and finishes with what is the remedy available. So remedy, funny sort of name. We do a week on remedies, if you remember, mostly for contracts. The reason they're so important to mention, and to mention again, the sections of the Australian consumer law that cover remedies, start looking at about 236 onwards. When you go to court, generally, I mean, there are rare exceptions of people who just start court cases to annoy other people, and they tend to do it over and over. And judges have a word for this, and it's called vexatious. It means they enjoy vexing other people by tying them up in court for no good reason. But in general, 99% of people will go to court to obtain a remedy. You don't go to court for fun or because you want to spend money or you enjoy the environment. You go there because you want damages, or you want the contract cancelled, or you want restitution or a replacement or something. That's your remedy. So think about it as the entire purpose of the whole process was for you to get that remedy. That's why they're so important, if that makes sense. I think Dr. Wan is back. Let me just check. Hi, Alex. I was just wondering if you can hear me this time. Maybe we can type a message in the chat box. Calling Dr. Wan. Thanks, Stephen. Great. In the meantime, I'll push on. Okay, case tables. We've gone into this, but there's another example. All you need is your principle, the case, and if you want, don't go by these. These are just random, but you could put the section in the textbook or the page number. So if you felt you needed to refresh on it or something, you can look it up. But essentially, relevant case and the principle, or relevant section of the ACL, for example, and that'll save you so much time in the exam. You'll be glad you did it. Just to give an example, because everyone's used to the case table, this is one way you might do your sections of Australian consumer law, for example. Don't again worry about the pages, it's a previous edition. But Section 18 prohibits parties from engaging in misleading or deceptive conduct. There you have it. That's in your law section. The section, the principle. Boom, done. Oops, I think Dr. Wan's been brought low by Murphy's Law. This is obvious, but we could suggest he try a reboot, like in the IT crowd, restart the whole computer. And similarly there. Now, corporations law is the other statute. So if you're going to be examined on a statute, it's likely to be this one, Australian Consumer Law, which comes under Schedule 2 of the Competition and Consumer Act. That's why it's a statute. It's an act of Parliament. And corporations law is, as you know, the other act. So again, you could have directors' duties, statutory duties, Section 180 to 83. And then you could put your little cases, because remember, the government takes people, or the watchdog, you might say, on behalf of the government and the people, takes cases to court when they've breached any of these sections. So if you have the section and you mention a case that was brought under that section, perfect. Fiduciary duties, Section 185. And if it's to do with conflicts of interest, you could cite Sections 181 to 3 and the Aberdeen Railway Company versus and Blakey Brothers, and so on. So if you have the section and a case brought under that section, then you're not really going to need your book much. The trick is going to be picking the right ones out of your table to match the question in the exam. Okay, well, there it is. I'm just reading Kristen's interaction with Dr. Wan. Sound issues. Has anyone had this problem and can suggest a fix? Maybe I'm thinking mute. Yeah, there is a, under the cog on the bottom right, you can check sound, whether sound's working or not, but I don't think Dr. Wan can hear me. But you open that up and then go to check sound and stuff. Ah, so Chrome's good. Christy says Chrome's good. A speakerphone. Yes, possibly. Hang on. Stand by one, please, everybody. This is not a definite fix because, oh joy, oh rapture, I'm having Telstra and NBN problems, and whether I will get a link or any bars at all is the next question. Unless possibly Kristen. Are you in a good reception area, Kristen?
I think so.
That might be good. Have you got your mobile near you somewhere?
I do.
Are you using a headset or just laptop mic?
Just laptop. So I could put my phone on speaker and hope that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Now,
and then Alex could talk through the, although how's you can, I guess we'll type our questions and he could answer through the phone if you have.
He might be able to hear if I can actually no, I can read them out to him. That's probably easier. But he should be able to hear you through the recording.
Oh, that'd be good because I'm on headset.
Okay.
And I've got 0 bars. Thank you, Telstra. So if you just type Alex's, give Alex your mobile, he can maybe call and test it. Oh, this is very exciting, isn't it? I heard somebody groan then. That wasn't Dr. Wan, was it?
I was not on mute. It was probably one of my dogs sitting next to me snoring.
Right.
I'd say that's what it was, actually. Sorry.
Okay. Kristen, if you could give him your mobile and put it on speaker, We can test it while I carry on and work through some of this, maybe.
Sure, I'm just sending him a chat, so we'll see if that'll work.
Okay, cool.
Oh, I'll jump back in if we can get it working.
Okay, no problem. Yes, coming up, Stephen. All coming up. Okay, so it's 50%. That's the info I have, 17 Feb, but go by what you personally received. That's the gospel, and this is just the information in general that we have under Canvas. So you've got until Monday the 17th, which isn't that long, which is why what we're trying to do is get these final collaborates and stuff out of your way. So that leaves you clear for week 12. There's no new material in week 12. So that's a clear revision week for you. And I think that's going to be far better for you guys just revising than having us coming in and annoying you when you're trying to learn stuff. So by all means, use, as I'll say later, use the discussion boards between yourselves, even after week 12 if you want. But after week 12, the ELAs are gone. We're sort of temporarily around and then we're off. So I'll explain that all a bit later too. So you all know this stuff. It's not the first exam you've done. Open book, you can, I think that question was asked earlier, but you can pretty much bring any printed material, textbook, printouts from the learning materials, but no tech. So no phones, computers, electronic dictionaries, iPads, etc. Sure, if you want to bring flashcards, I see that as printed material there. Should be okay. You can tab your books, highlight them. I think you can even write in them. So it's pretty much the fully open book exam, which is handy, but it's also a trap because, as you know, time acts in bizarre ways in exams, and you start to look up one question and suddenly time's up. So that's why we recommend the case table ploy. Okay, here we go. It's going to be 3 extended response questions. You got to do them all. There's no options. These are my tips. They may not be right on the money, but they'll be pretty close. Remember that we've covered contracts and you've also done assignments on them. And that tends to mean, not always, but tends to mean you've been assessed on that. So even though you were busy with assignments and stuff and probably hoping for the end of it, I would focus on the second half of semester because it's more likely to be about directors' powers, company constitutions, and all that corporate law. But I think you're nearly always bound to get an ACL question, and that's what everyone forgets because they go corporations, contracts, done, and they forget the good old ACL, which actually is in the text, and we spent week 3 on it. So yeah, members' remedies, what powers do members have, what powers do directors have? Constitution, which is week 7, you know, how do you change a constitution? Remember all that stuff? What sort of meetings are required? What section is it under? And say to yourself again, section. I got to quote the section. But if you have all this stuff in a case and section table, then I think you'll be laughing. Or if not laughing, at least smiling. That's what they're worth. The first one's 20, second one's 10, third one's 20, and it has 2 subparts. So what I do, and I know it's nerve-wracking because everyone immediately starts writing like hell, and I sit there and I go to the back of the book and I scribble out a timer thing. And in this case, I'd work it out like that based on the questions. And that would tell me that if I used every minute, I'd want to spend 72 minutes on one, 36 on 2 and 3. So I don't end up spending all my time on the one with the least marks. What I then do in my head is say, let's make it 60 minutes, 30 and 60. And I've nearly always met that goal, and I've nearly always left early and nearly always done, you know, well. So that system works for me, but if you have your own system, but I would say, you know, 5 minutes at the beginning just working out your timing will be worth time well spent. That would be my tip. Is it an instant fail if you run out of time to answer the last question? Hell no, Shivaza. No. It depends on what marks you got for the others. Just means whatever you've written, you'll get marked on that. And if you did the first 2, you'd get marks for them. So no instant fails. Instant fail would be a completely blank paper handed in. We might even manage to give you a point for spelling your name right or something. Because we all want you to pass, you know. Yes, they will, Mark. They should be up in the discussion boards within probably half an hour of the show. And they'll be there for as long as you like. Okay, so this is probably more than you want to know. You've second year veterans, you all know how to do exams, but it's just some tips that you might want to read through later. This is some of our suggestions in this unit. My critical one would be do all the weekly activity practice questions to a timer. People aren't used to doing that, but if you put your iPhone in front of you with the stopwatch on and go 45 minutes and write the best answer you can, and then check against the board and what we've said and so on, and then maybe do it again. If you can get that timing down, then in my opinion, from my personal feeling, about 60% of the exam stress is out. And then you go into the exam, you know how fast you've got to write, you've practiced it, and it just works. Got a question from Christy I'm just having a look at. You can see it there, everybody. Doing my test online in the past, I've had issues with not being allowed materials, even when the LO said we can. Do the people that watch us know we allowed them to? They should do, Christy, because even the online exam has a cover, and that cover says fully open book exam. And it says what you're allowed and what you're not allowed. For allowed, it says open book, and not allowed is technological stuff. So you do get...
Brian, it's Kristen.
Yep.
We've got Dr. Wan on the speakerphone now, so I'm hoping you're going to be able to hear him through my speaker here, maybe.
Excellent. Can Dr. Wan hear me, or shall I just switch over to him?
Try again now. Dr. Wan, can you hear?
I can hear him, sort of barely, but I can make out. I'll do my best.
I've just turned my computer up again, so that might help, hopefully.
All right, fantastic, everybody. We've managed to work around the tech issues, and we have Dr. Wan on the line. Thank you so much for coming along, Dr. Wan. I know how busy you are with all the on-campus courses and everything. It's a great privilege to have Dr. Wan here with us. And what we thought was we'll just ask him a few questions and about how he got into the law and what he recommends, perhaps, if any of you are interested in pursuing law a bit further. And so you can get to know our Swinburne academic a bit better. And by all means, please, he's here now. He's taken the time. If you have a question, either grab the mic by clicking on it or type a question in the chat box, because I'm sure Dr. Wan would be delighted to take those questions. So right now I'm going to go back to the beginning of the show, and we'll go through some of the pre-prepared ones. Maybe Kristen can read them to him. So I'll just give him a brief intro for you guys. Dr. Wan is our lecturer in major discipline coordinator in both undergraduate and postgraduate business. He has a PhD from Swinburne, a Master of Theology, I believe, from Newcastle, a Master of Laws from University of Northumbria in the UK, and his bachelor's degree from Birmingham, also in the UK. So, Kristen, can you see the questions okay?
I can. Brian, I might let you read the first one, so I'm going to run and grab a phone charger so that my phone doesn't die halfway through this.
Okay, I hope he can hear me, or I can type.
I can see those questions as well. So, yeah, I'm happy to go with that order, if you like. Whatever you like, Brian.
Yeah, that would be fine. Thank you very much. If first question, of course, were you always interested in being in the law or the legal profession, or did this come to you later on?
I think it sort of came to me a bit later. I did do a law degree. I didn't intend to do a law degree. I wanted to do accounting, believe it or not, but I ended up doing law instead, and it grew on me, let's put it this way. It certainly wasn't love at first sight, okay? But as I progressed, as I was doing the course, the degree, it became a lot more interesting, and I could identify with it a lot more, and that sort of gripped my interest at the beginning. So, after I finished my degree, when I started working in law, that sort of took me to another level. It made me much more interested in what the law degree actually offers. It makes it a lot more, if you like, makes it a lot more tangible to me. It opens up quite a lot of different skill sets, having done the law degree, and as most of you would probably have found out, even just doing this course, it actually helps you to think about the issues a lot more. It's not just regurgitating facts. It is more about gathering information and informing conclusions in a logical manner so that you can present appropriate recommendations. So that's been some of the things that has intrigued me. It's also opened up the skills that I never knew I had when I was doing the law degree. One of the skills that as a law student that you develop quite a lot is your written, your communication skills, and it allows you, for example, to argue a point, and helps you, challenge a particular proposition and ask questions. And that actually is a great tool to have when you are doing negotiations. For example, when you're doing business negotiations in meetings, it allows you to not just look at anything on the surface, but you also start to explore what is the undercurrent beyond what the conversation is going. So it allows you to ask questions. So it makes you hone in those skills a lot more, and you become a lot more sharper with those skills. And I think a law course, a law, a subject actually does that for you. Okay, and I think you guys would have seen things like how you worked your assignment questions. For example, you do need to look at the facts, look at all the ideas, and then present it in a way that would allow you to present a particular point of view, a particular stand. So all of those things are really valuable that you learn in a law subject or in a law course. Okay.
Oh, thank you. That was extremely interesting. And I suppose it follows on from that. Could you describe your journey from the beginning of your interest in law to your doctoral studies, what the motivation was to pursue it that far, and also to your current position?
Well, sure. I think I've worked in the industry for nearly 10 years. Okay, as mainly working in corporate, and I've only started teaching probably about 20 years ago. At the beginning, it was just something that was quite fulfilling for me when I first started, because it allows me to transfer what I know to students who are learning the law. And as my interests grow in specific areas, particularly in commercial fields, it also allows me to start tinkering with some of the interesting things that does come up when you are teaching law. And it allows you to reflect on your professional experience as well. So my professional experience has mainly been in construction law. Okay, so it's allowed me to allows me to sort of consider that a bit more as I go into as I do my master's degree, where I did a thesis on construction contracts. I think that sort of that spurred me in that particular directions. So there are two main areas in law that interest me tremendously, and that is in commercial law, which mainly in contract law, and the other one is in corporations law. Okay, so when I went and did my doctoral studies. That was what I focused on. My doctoral studies was specifically on a form of contracting clause, which is good faith contracting, which is quite an interesting area. But I won't bore everyone with that particular mind. Okay, but it is certainly something that you pick up as you uh, um, um, as you progress through this particular journey. It's a journey for me as well, as much as it is for someone who is actually learning the law. So 20 years in teaching, it's led me to where I am at the moment in terms of sort of looking at programs and sort of running some of these major units. So my focus has sort of culminated in me focusing on these two particular areas. So that's basically my area, which is in business law.
Okay, and what sort of career path do you think current law graduates can expect? Is there a future in law? They're saying everyone's going to be replaced by robots and things. Will we see robotic barristers in the future, do you think?
I doubt it. I think it's quite hard to program a good lawyer into a machine. I think there is still a great career path for law graduates. As a degree itself, I think it lends itself as being probably one of the most, well, in my biased opinion, one of the most useful generalist degree. If you're not thinking about going to become a lawyer, but as a generalist degree, it is great because it gives you some skills that are probably not, they are transferable skills that you learn doing a law degree that is probably not the same as in other discipline. And most employers still like an employee who has some legal background. And certainly someone who understands something about law, the law gives companies some confidence in sense. Okay, that's what I found. But I think you can see lawyers in all fields or law graduates in all fields today, and they are very useful. They are all very flexible graduates. Okay, and I've seen that with my own eyes as to how flexible law graduates are. I'm not just saying it because I've got legal qualifications, but I think it is a tremendous sort of background to have.
I think you may have answered the next one, but I'll ask it anyway in case you'd like to add anything. But so what would you say is the best thing about studying law? Say for like yourself who started in accounting, most of our learners in this unit, I think, are probably in accounting and business. So what would be the best thing for them about studying law?
Well, I think studying law gives you, it gives you, I think I've mentioned this previously, I just elaborate a little bit more. Some of the skills that you develop in law would be, like your problem solving skills, ability to work under pressure, as all of you would have realized. If you're in an exam, you've got 3 or 4 questions to do. You got to read the questions, decide what you need to include. You are always under pressure. You've got deadlines to meet. Assignments includes a fair bit of reading and then synthesizing information. Those are sort of transferable skills that are really useful to have for someone who is working in the industry. And of course, law requires a deep understanding of the decisions that are made by others. So in a sense, you also develop skills to resolve conflicts, okay, fairly quickly. And it's an invaluable skills generally for those who are in management and leadership. So I think these are some of the things that would come out as you are exposed to this particular discipline.
Okay, thank you. And where would say we've had one or two people say they're interested after doing this unit in pursuing law studies. Where could graduates of this unit continue their studies in law if they wish to?
Well, I think Swinburne has a fairly flexible sort of unit spread. It allows you to actually take subjects from any degree field. That's if you're just interested in one or two subjects. Uh, so, but if you are interested in pursuing law, okay, as a degree as well, you don't have to abandon your current whatever your current study. You could always combine that with a law degree. Okay, it may just take a couple more years. Okay, from the time when you would have normally finished your current qualifications. Okay, but I would say that it is worth it. You could combine it. Accounting and law is probably one of the best combinations that you could have. Okay, graduates with both those two qualifications are often in high command. Okay, and they do command a fair bit of advantage in terms of career options. So I think, you know, if one is interested in doing law, it is something that they should, you know, I'm more than happy to, you know, have a chat with anyone that is interested to do that, to help you explore a little bit more about the law degree. More than happy to do that. Feel free to email me to do that if anyone wishes to.
All right, that's very kind of Dr. Wan there, everyone. I hope you all took note of that. If you have any questions on pursuing law, shoot him an email and you'll be going straight to the horse's mouth. So that's a good contact to have. Now, finally, last but not least, do you have, having supervised this unit and the on-campus units for quite a while now, do you have any exam tips you could share based on your experience over the years?
Well, well, the routine stuff will probably be just because this is an open book exam, so it's really important for students to come prepared, meaning to say you've got to get your notes and your materials organized, and I know most of you would have already done that, but I think having said that, it's most important, for example, to pay special attention to topics and areas in which you are struggling with the most. Okay, now topics and areas that you are already very familiar with, you don't need to waste too much time on them. As long as you know where your materials are, if you need to access them, that's probably good enough. The areas where you're struggling most, I think, is the area that you should pay close attention to how you've set up those notes. Okay, so that's I think that's probably one major tip. The other one is when you go into the exam, when you see the exam questions, okay, the first thing to not do is don't panic. Sometimes the question may look quite long. Okay, it may look quite lengthy. There may be a bit of narrative in there. Now, I'll give you a bit of a tip. The longer the questions, the better. Okay, because it might not sound very logical, because the more information you have in the question, the more you can narrow it down to what the question actually requires from you. And just bear in mind that we will never ever ask you anything beyond what you've covered. Okay, so everything will still be confined to what you've already covered, the materials and the areas. So there will be nothing in the question that requires you to do something out of the ordinary or out of the material. Okay, so just read the question carefully. You've got time to read it. There is, I think, a 15 minutes reading time. So just read them through and then start, you know, mentally take mental notes about what area, what's the focus here. what is the question really asking? What specifically? The question is going to specifically ask you about something. It's not going to be very wide, so just take your time to read it. As I said, if you see a long question, do not panic. Okay, treat it as a little bit of a help, because it actually helps you to narrow things down. The shorter the question is the one that you need to worry about. Now, we don't actually have a lot of short questions. We do have a long question in this coming exam, so just don't panic. Just read it carefully so that you know exactly what you are required to do, okay? All right.
Fantastic. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Everybody, please thank Dr. Wan for coming along and for his idea of genius of using the mobile to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. And thank you very much indeed, Dr. Wan. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody benefited a lot from that. I don't know if you can see the comments, but everybody's saying thank you. That was great. And
No
I think
it's my absolute pleasure to do it. I just wish that you know, all these audio and computer stuff works. Normally I'm pretty good with this stuff. I'm just not sure what's happened today, but I'll get to the bottom of it. Anyway, thanks very much, Brian, for setting this up. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it, and have a wonderful evening.
Okay, you too. Thank you, everyone.
Talk to you later. I'll talk to you later. Bye for now. Okay, everybody. Well, I hope you found that useful. It was great to have Dr. Wan here and sharing his expertise and experience. Did everyone enjoy that? Was that worthwhile? Should we do it again, or make a nice break from Kristen and I? I think Wan liked it. I think, yep. Oh, good. All right. It's good to hear from the top sometimes, isn't it? I think I was nearly done on my bit, and I know we're pressed for time now. So the next lot of my stuff was all about what you can do to prepare. I was suggesting practice to a timer, focus on the last half of the term, get your statute sections, that's corporations law and Australian consumer law, only two you need to worry about, really. Do the practice questions each week, because they're the best practice. As Dr. Wan said, we're not going to ask you anything you haven't done in the learning materials. Some people, excuse me, like to look at past exams. I don't think we have any. One of the reasons is the questions change, and some areas we look at one term, we won't look at the other. So you may well be practicing for things that aren't going to appear. But if you practice for the activities of the last half of the TP, I think you'll be right on the money. Yeah, thanks, Kristen. That was a great job with the phone and sorting that all out. Fantastic. I thought it worked well. I had pretty good audio. I don't know about everybody else. Okay, ILAC, we're suggesting, as I explained, it's used in the legal profession. It'll get you the most marks because the assessors will have a table of cases and statutes, and all I have to do is look at your law section and go, got it, got it, got it, got it, rather than pour through pages of guff to find it. Okay, so yes, ILAC, etc., and so forth. I think that's just repeating what I already said. Practice questions. You can read through this later at your leisure. I'll put them up very shortly after the show. Yeah, this is an important one. Quite often what will happen is people will write, 3 pages as an answer in the exam, and they might go, but I thought I did better. And what they did was great writers, great novelists potentially, but no cases, no sections, nothing to back it up. And what that is really is pub talk. Everybody knows the term bush lawyer in Australia. You can go to the pub and chat to someone and everybody, oh, you can't do this and the law says that. But if you said to them, well, what statute where that's written or what case are you referring to. Of course, they could not answer you. And that's the thing. If you're just talking, then it's your opinion. It's not the law. As soon as you put a case in there, and as soon as you mention a section of the Australian consumer law you're referring to, now you're talking law. So it doesn't matter how well I back up everything you say. Think to yourself, how do I know that? Which section did I get that from? Which case says that a counter offer destroys all previous offers? And then write it down. And that's a big one. Make sure that everything you say you back up with case and statute. And I'm done. So now what I'm going to do is pass you over to Kristen, who's standing by, to yeah, Daniela's got a good idea. You can search for papers in the library. Probably good if you've got the time to sit past exams, but as I say, there won't be anything in it that's not in the learning materials. Okay, well, I'm going to now pass you into Kristen's capable hands for the second half. Thanks, everybody, for bearing with us on that. And I'll come back at the end to say cheerio.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, so we're going to go through a practice question, effectively. Just bear in mind that this isn't going to be formatted as ILAC. We're kind of just going through step by step, so it's not as we'd really want to see formatted in the exam. For when you're revising, practice doing everything in ILAC, and then you're, I guess, in the right frame of mind going into the exam. This is just a skeleton outline of things you might want to consider in your answer, but like I said, not formatted well or anything like that. All right, so the question is, and this is one of the 20-mark questions as an example. So a company board of directors have decided to sell off some properties owned by the company. The shareholders, however, are opposed to the sale and say that they will pass a motion to stop the sale. Using the relevant statute law and case law, advise the board. And so to also think about, what if the directors own the company buying the properties? So this question is relating to the principle of separating the shareholders from the company actual management powers and the board of directors. So students, what we'd be wanting to see students discuss is the following. So the issue where the shareholders have the ability and the power to actually override the board's decision to sell some of the property which the company owns. So you can look at section 198A. So the board has the power to make business decisions and manage the company, not the shareholders. And then within that same section, subsection 2, that the board can exercise all of the powers of the company except those in the general meeting. And you can see there a bit of a rough breakdown of the marks that would get you effectively if you identified these points and these sort of parts of the legislation in your answer. And also the ASX listing rules, 11.1 and 11.2. They give the shareholders power in a public company to give their approval where the company is going to dispose of major assets or change the nature of the business. And then, so other than legislation and those rules, then we've got some cases. So Strong v. J. Brow and Son and Strathfield Pty Ltd, common law authority for the principle that the board has the power to make business decisions to sell off property. You can see the marks attributed to that are pretty high, identifying that one. So another case, so the case of automatic self-cleansing filter v. Cunningham is a common law authority for the principle that shareholders are bound by their contract with the company, and that gives the board its management powers. And so the shareholders can't just order that the board sell certain property or stop them doing it. Further, the case of Shaw and Shaw, common law authority for the principle that shareholders cannot pass a motion to override a decision of the board. Now, these two are both stated here. Might be some examples as well as to how you could state these cases in your law section of your ILAC. So applying them there briefly but really clearly in terms of what the legal principle is, and then that puts you ready, I guess, to just apply those to the facts in the application section. In conclusion, both statute law and case law support the argument that the shareholders can't pass a motion to stop the sale of the property unless it is the main asset of the company. So further, what if the directors are not acting in good faith or honestly? So back to that question we had in that first slide. So what if the directors own the property, own the company buying the property? So then you can step into section 181. the breach of director's duty of good faith and conflict of interest, and some cases to support that. Furs Limited v Tonkes, Regal Hastings v Gulliver, and ASIC v Adler. So breach of section 180 subsection 10, discuss possible defences available. So things like the business judgment rule, were they acting within that rule? And that's sort of something you can expand on quite well, I think, in terms of discussing it as much as you can within the facts. But that also could be something you could identify as, how we were talking earlier, if you need more information, that could be something that falls into that category sometimes too. And then stepping on from that, I guess as part of your conclusion, you can address remedies and penalties. So consequences for breach of director's duties. There's a civil penalty order under section 1317E. So disqualification from managing companies, a pecuniary fine of up to $200,000, and or pay compensation to the company for the loss and damage incurred because of the breach. And if it's found to be dishonest or reckless, then there could also be criminal penalties which apply to the directors as well. And that could be a fine of up to $220,000 or prison for up to 5 years. Okay, so this is going back into ILACs. Like I said, those that's the problem with just steps through really isn't formatted well from ILAC. It's probably more of a starting point, sort of that BEMS that you could expand upon, but I guess it gives you a bit of an idea really in terms of the law and how maybe some good ways to identify the law and just that legal principle coming from each case to get started in your answer. So structure. This is sort of some tips how to get yourself a HD in the exam. So adopt ILAC. I would just say stick to that. All of the questions in the exam are going to be suitable for using the ILAC structure. So absolutely do it. I don't think you can go very wrong if you're using ILAC, and if you follow it step by step, it's pretty foolproof way to structure your answer, covering all of the main points that you need to cover. Identify the issue correctly. It's actually identifying the issue and not writing the question again. I think Brian said earlier on that in the exam, don't waste your time really rewriting the question. You're going to have limited time and you're better off using that to actually identify issues and work to get some marks. There wouldn't be any marks assigned for just simply rewriting the question. And identify as many as you think you can. Like, I wouldn't just stop at one. If you think there is a few there, identify as many as you possibly can. Explaining the law applicable to the issue and getting the main cases and principles. So like I said in that example question, the way that was written is quite good, I think, and just briefly, but covers everything in terms of the legal principle from the cases. I think one thing in the assignments that a lot of people did in their law section was they certainly identified cases, but perhaps didn't identify legal principle. They maybe more so just identified, I guess, maybe the legal area or the area of law that we've covered which that case applied to, perhaps just misrepresentation or something like that, but didn't go into any more detail as to what the actual principle was from the case. So you could, I guess, expand on misrepresentation and what that actually means. Application, so clearly applying the facts to the law, to include defences and any missing information that you would also want to know. I said earlier with the application, that's really the major part, I would say, of the ILAC. It's really important, and the more, probably the better you set up your law section, you're ready to step straight into the application. I think it sets you up better to move straight into application and do that really clearly as well, but also not wasting time. Don't restate the legal principles too much if you don't have to. If you've got them really clearly in your law section, save yourself some time, which I think you will be. You want to hold on to as much of that as you possibly can in an exam. And a conclusion. So your opinion and the remedies available. And I think with your opinion as well, weigh up. So if you've identified numerous issues and potential arguments, perhaps for and against, weigh them up a little bit to reach a conclusion as to which may be, like if you're providing advice to somebody on one side of the argument, which argument may support their position best and why as well. And I guess in that, then you can step into the remedies that may be available for them if they pursue that course of action and if they're successful in that. Okay, in the exam, so manage your time. You can have the knowledge, but it's no good if you don't actually get it down in time. So I think how Brian mentioned earlier with timing the time you've got available to the value of the questions and the marks available for each question, absolutely do that, because that's something I think we all run out of time towards the end. You sort of get bogged down in the first few, and then you find yourself rushing towards the end. I would also say as well, use your reading time really, really well. It's not a long time, but it's still some time that you can go through and have a read. And I think sometimes, I know I certainly found when I was doing exams that you might read a question, you go, oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. But by the time you're thinking about it through the whole exam, say it's the last question, you do get there, I guess, and you're thinking about that, it's in your head, you've had a bit more time to think about it and can really get you started a bit better when you actually get ready to write a response to the question. Oh, we'll cover that one. So plan out your time carefully. So do that, and I would say try to stick to that as best you can, because you certainly don't want to be missing out on time. Missing out on time for a question at the end, particularly if you think that's a question you can do quite well on. You'd hate to miss out on getting all of your answer down or something like that. Be aware that individual questions may incorporate different elements of law. So contracts are typically or usually going to be common law sort of cases, whereas corporations law is going to be the Corporations Act, and then you can also support it, and you should also support that with cases. The Australian Consumer Law, so 3.3, misrepresentation under the ACL, sorry. So have a look at pages 233 to 252 and do the exercises in module 3. And it's probably a good thing for all of the modules, particularly like Dr. Wan was saying, areas you're not feeling so familiar with, go back and redo those questions and the exercises and have a look at the discussions as you're revising. I think it's one thing to feel like you're familiar with the content, but the more practice you have in actually applying that and answering an ILAC and things like that is best. So cite sections and cases if you're asked to. So I guess that's using your reading time. Really have a look what's actually been asked. So if the question says discuss relevant statutory provisions and cases, then you're going to be looking at citing both of those, sections and cases. So as an example, advise X under the ACL and relevant case law, including case law decided under its predecessor, Trade Practices Act. So then we're looking at sections of the ACL plus cases. So I guess you're probably only halfway there if you're doing one of those. Really make sure you do both. Or your answer must include case law where relevant and the provisions of the Corporations Act. So sections of the Corporations Act and support it with cases. You'll have plenty of those through the modules. There's been lots of cases and everything to support and really clear as to what sections they're relevant to within the Corporations Act as well. So use those, and they're things that your case table, and I guess you can do the same thing for your legislation as well. Take that in, and if you'd put effort in getting that really good, I suppose, and having your legal principles nice and clear on what it relates to, you're halfway there. For the law section of your any ILACs, you can just pull that straight out of there effectively, save yourself a bit of time. Any exam tips? So if you don't have time to prepare a fully formatted sort of ILAC type response to a question, try to at least provide an outline of your response. So that way you might get some marks for what you put down. So you might not get full marks, but at least if we can see where you were heading with it and where your thoughts were, that might get you something. And that's probably something I'd just be thinking about in the last couple of minutes of the exam. If you're on the last question, for example, get started, be thinking, no way I'm going to get time to finish this. Spend some time just putting down that outline because it's better than nothing. Absolutely. Remember, there isn't necessarily a single correct answer for the questions, so you'll primarily be assessed on your ability to identify relevant issues and laws, apply the laws to the cases of both the plaintiff and defendant, and present a logical and consistent argument. So I think in the assignment, it was really good to see lots of people did identify, even though you're providing Bob advice, for example, identifying arguments that may well work against him. But then I think it also helps to strengthen the arguments and your advice for the other party when you can identify potential arguments that work against them, but also what they can do to rebut those arguments as well. Helps to strengthen that. And that'll also play in well with your conclusion so that you can weigh up what may, I guess, get in the way for the party you're advising as to stopping them being successful in their claim, their arguments. So where can we get more info? So helpful tips on exam preparation and for exam day will be provided to you in week 12, which is going to be a revision week, and the assignment discussion boards in the assignment discussions in the discussion boards for your group. So have a look at this information and ask questions and chat with your colleagues in the discussions next week. It's really just open slide for next week. Ask any questions you've got, whether they be just exam and format and structure and all that sort of stuff, or content questions. Make the most of it and ask away. All the content's sort of covered this week, so then you just focus next week on revising and getting started on that. Any questions? Either me or Brian, I guess. Actually, I might jump in quickly before, see if we have any questions come through. I know this exam's open book, and I think it's really tempting to just take just an abundance of information and stuff with you. I think it's, yeah, make sure what you're taking in with you, make sure you know it well, and, you know, tab it and things like that. But also, if you're taking notes, make sure that you're own, and you, I guess they're summarised. I think it's really hard to find time in the exam balancing looking through your books and your notes and everything, then also making sure you've got enough time to put that down as an answer. I think it's very easy to get a bit complacent. Well, I know I certainly, especially initially when I was doing open book exams, you can get a bit complacent thinking, I'll have my notes, like it'll be fine. But if you don't know them well, you're just going to run out of time in the exam, because 3 hours certainly seems like a long time. And if you're not in an exam, it probably is, but under that sort of time pressure, you're probably going to want every minute of it, I would say. So put yourself in the best position to do that and take your notes ready to use. Don't just print out slabs of information, but take them summarised and make sure you know what's in there and where you can find things, whether it be little sort of table of contents at the front or something, so that you just know exactly where to go. If that saves you a minute here or there, that might mean you can finish that last question a bit more wholly than what you could otherwise. Sorry, is there any questions? If anyone wants to either take the mic or type it in if you've got any. I think we've got a few coming. I might throw it to you too, Brian, while we wait for questions. Is there anything else you'd want to add to tips and things for exams?
I think I'm done, actually. I did my tip section, but let's hang on. I'll just go over to the questions. Sorry.
Sure. I can see, is there a limit to the amount of paper or written materials you can bring? So no, there's not. You can bring whatever you'd like. Like I said, I would just bear in mind, the more you bring, the more you have to look through, I guess. So you're absolutely more than welcome to bring whatever you like, but make sure it works for you, I would say.
Yeah, and if you bring a trolley or something, you might trip people up. So. Oh, Samantha, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for saying that. Did you see that, Kristen? Samantha,
oh, I did. That's very kind.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
We've missed one a bit further up from Daniel. Are we required to cite full cases? So I'm assuming names and year is all we're wanting in an exam?
Yes, even in an exam, just the two names is fine. Don't worry about the long form. Just stick in Smith and Jones, and that's it, and the principal. The small desks, yeah. There's a great Steven Seagal movie, I forget the name, where he's in some course and he's sitting at one of those desks with the bit in front, and he's way too big for it, and he ends up just standing up and sort of pulling it apart. Sometimes I feel like that with those desks. Thanks, Michael. Good of you to say so. I'm glad you found it interesting. Wow, Natasha liked it too. No need for you, Stephen, no. Great, Daniela. Good review from Daniela as well. Thank you, Daniela. A real text from Michael. Well, that's good to hear, Michael, because a lot of people say, oh, where's the e-text? And we explain that basically law units will nearly always ask you to get a hard copy. And the reason is you're not allowed any electronic stuff in the exam. So if we said e-text, you'd be without the book. So I love hard copy books myself, and with law, you can have the comfort of your textbook sitting right next to you in the exam. So great to hear you like having a real text. Any more questions, or should we? I think we're just moving on to me to a wrap now. While you're typing your questions, I just wanted to say, yeah, the ELAs, we're kind of sessional, so we finish up and they the ELAs go away in week 12, which is end of next week. So if you have questions, this week and next week are a really good time to ask them. After that, we ride off into the sunset. And I, as in my mysterious form as UC, will be floating around, but probably not on a sort of daily basis. But if there's something desperately worrying you in the week or the days building up to the exam, I'll try to get to it if you put it in the boards. And there's no bar to chatting away with each other in the boards after week 12 either. So that's something to remember. I think Kristen's answering some questions. Yeah. I would just add to what Kristen has said, Shivaza. You'd be probably better off quoting the cases and sections than the textbook. I've yet to see a marking guide that gave you a mark for quoting the textbook. So if you can, try and use a case or a section, because there may well be a mark in it for you. That's if you like marks. Yes, Kelly, they usually go up within about 15 minutes of the show. Kristen and I'll put them up in our groups. And then that following on that, a link to the recording probably, although you can always access the recording through the collaborate menu if you wish. Okay, so that's week 12. Finally, I'll leave Kristen to answer that one for you, Shivaza, if you like. Finally, I just want to say congratulations, everybody. You've reached the end, pretty much. This is week 11, and there's still stuff that may be in the exam, so don't fall asleep just yet. But yeah, this is pretty much the last teaching week, and we hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you to the few of you who have said you have, and please do, if you get a minute in your busy study schedules, do the student survey for us, because it's always good to know what you thought and how you went, and even though we don't know who said what unless you put your name there, usually people are so kind and say such beautiful things that I want to thank all of you who've already done it, and all of you who are going to. Thanks in advance, and congratulations and well done. And I really hope you've enjoyed it a little, because life is to be enjoyed after all. And Samantha, thank you. Thank you. Samantha says, if only every TP was like this one. Well, it's been a pleasure and a delight, and you too, Juan. So I don't know if Kristen has anything to add in terms of congratulations.
I don't think so. Yeah, just exactly as Brian said, congrats on making it through. It's absolutely flown, I think, this teaching period. This was my first teaching period as an ELA, and it's, yeah, absolutely flown by. And I think it's, yeah, everyone's made such great progress, and seeing, I think I noticed a pretty good improvement from assignment 1 to assignment 2. So I think that's just wonderful to see that everyone takes on that feedback. We try to spend the time doing that. So it's really wonderful to see everyone taking that on board and really putting in that effort to improve and, yeah, make up marks perhaps where they missed out in the first assignment. But good luck with the exam, everyone. I think, yeah, these sort of tips, and just put in the time to make sure you feel ready. Use your time in the exam. It seems like, I know 3 hours seems a lifetime to be sitting there doing this, but it'll just absolutely fly. So yeah, enjoy the revision before, and good luck with it, and your subjects from now as well.
Thanks, Kristen. And thanks also to Juan and Gemma for your kind comments. Osika too. I'm looking in the chat box. And Simone, thank you. Thank you, Daniel and Leah. Angela. Oh, good. Well, I think it's the first time delivery, so we'll have to work together and see how we can inject a little bit of fun and enjoyment into it, but I'm sure that can be arranged. Thanks, Han. Been great to be with you. Shivaza, thank you for saying that, and I hope you're all filling out the surveys and being equally kind to us. Thank you very much, all of you. All right, well, good night, everybody. I think that's it. It's a wrap. Not sure what I did in the final slide. There you go. Thank you. Thanks everyone for a great term and for all your efforts.